You know what really gets under my skin? It's the endless noise, the political promises that just evaporate. And the reality. It's usually a punch to the gut. Welcome to the Deep Dive Report show with Mike and Sam. We're the ones who actually dig into what happened. Today, we're going headfirst into the Trump administration. We're looking at the facts, the documents to show you the massive gap between the talk and the walk. We've got transcripts from video clips. These don't spin things. They show a reality that's just miles away from the rhetoric you heard. Our mission, cut the crap, tell you what these sources really reveal about what they did or didn't do.
Exactly. Politics is so often just competing stories, isn't it? We're not here to push one story over another. We're here to take apart the information in these sources, look at the actual results of that time.
Okay, let's dive in. First up, a classic line. We need less government spending. You hear it all the time, right? Especially from one side. But here's where our source material just throws a wrench in the works. Because, get this, according to this transcript we have from a Midas Touch video clip, the Trump administration was actually spending more per day than the Biden administration.
Yeah.
Let that sink in for a second.
It's pretty striking, isn't it? Because it directly contradicts, well, a core piece of Republican messaging for decades. That constant drumbeat about fiscal conservatism, it just doesn't seem to match the spending patterns in this source. You have to ask why the disconnect. Why say one thing and do another fiscally? The source puts it bluntly. Even if the whole good idea is less government spending, it has absolutely failed at that with Trump spending more than Biden did.
So yeah, that whole promise, less government spending under Trump. This source calls it an absolute failure, a total flip from the sales pitch. Okay, now let's shift gears to something our source calls an incredibly weird thing. The whole dynamic with Elon Musk. You know, top campaign donor, big public figure, and apparently someone who wanted some unusual access. The report details how Musk apparently tried to get himself a top-secret Pentagon briefing about China, war plans.
Mm-hmm. And that raises some pretty big questions, right? About influence, about access, who gets to know what at the highest levels. The fact that the New York Times reported on it, too, just highlights how unusual this situation was. It makes you wonder about the process. How does the donor even try to get that kind of sensitive info?
And here's the real kicker. The transcript from that Midas Touch clip, it says the president was absolutely unaware that his top campaign donor had arranged this for himself. Seriously. Your biggest money guy is angling for classified war plans, and you're clueless. That sounds like, well, either zero oversight or just total chaos inside.
It definitely suggests a breakdown somewhere. Communication, maybe, or just key allies acting with a surprising amount of independence. And the fact they canceled the briefing once it leaked, that shows someone realized, okay, this went too far. Like the source said, Musk had to eat that too.
But wait, there's more Musk drama. Apparently, he also tried to get his own guy installed as acting IRS commissioner, and that didn't go smoothly either. We're told the Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent, wasn't happy, complained he didn't back the move.
Right, and that gives you a peek into potential internal clashes, doesn't it? The push and pull over key jobs, the Treasury Secretary pushing back. It shows this wasn't some universally agreed upon thing within the administration.
And just like that secret briefing clan, this one blew up. Musk's pick, out as acting commissioner just 2 days later. It just makes you wonder, what was going on behind closed doors? How much instability did these power plays cause?
It really highlights how complicated personnel stuff is in government, especially when powerful outsiders try to, well, exert their influence. The quick reversal here suggests maybe internal checks or just resistance, won out in the end.
Now check this out. Elon Musk, right, supposedly close to the administration, but he also took a loud public stance against Donald Trump's tariffs, said they'd have disastrous implications. Even for his own companies, you'd think they might listen to a guy like that, a big supporter raising red flags.
It's a fascinating dynamic, isn't it? Even close allies could have major policy disagreements, and they weren't afraid to say so publicly. It really underscores that, political support doesn't always mean you agree on everything. Not by a long shot.
But guess what happened? Trump has ignored his loud public stance against them and kept the tariffs. So much for that influence, huh? And things got even weirder. It escalated into a loud public beef between Musk and Peter Navarro, one of Trump's advisors.
Yeah, that public escalation, it's pretty revealing. It suggests maybe the internal decorum just wasn't there. A willingness to get personal right out in the open.
And Musk didn't hold back. According to the transcript from Midas Touch, he called Navarro dumber than a sack of bricks. I mean, wow. You can't make this stuff up. And the president's reaction, basically, shrug it off. boys will be boys kind of thing. He decided to keep Peter Navarro, despite the insults flying around.
That apparent dismissal of such a, well, pointed and public attack,
Yeah.
it says a lot about the internal culture. Maybe a tolerance for conflict.
Oh.
Or maybe just overlooking personal stuff for political reasons.
And this wasn't just some one-off spat. The source says this kind of infighting was indicative of the entire administration. It wasn't just Musk and Navarro. It was apparently happening all over.
Yeah, putting it in that broader context, it suggests real challenges. How do you keep a unified agenda? How do you govern effectively when key people are publicly at each other's throats?
Then there's the story about Musk's influence maybe fading. Remember that signature email he reportedly sent government employees? The "tell me 5 things you did last week or you'll be fired" one. Pretty intense. Well, according to the Washington Post analysis mentioned in the source, people just ignore it. It's apparently being ignored by multiple, if not most, agencies in the government. Why? Because Musk no longer really seems to have the juice to do anything about it.
And that really shows how influence can just evaporate, right?
Right.
Especially if there's no real power to back it up. The fact that this command, once maybe feared, is now just ignored. That points to a big shift in how Musk was perceived inside the government. His authority seemed to erode.
So it looks like all these things, the Pentagon briefing mess, the IRS thing, fighting over tariffs, the public name-calling it, led to insiders, even allies getting frustrated with his unpredictability.
Yeah.
They start seeing it as a political liability. That's not good.
That change in perception, it really highlights the downside of being erratic in politics. Stability, predictability, those are usually valued, even by your friends.
And if you needed more proof of maybe declining clout, look at that Wisconsin Supreme Court election. Musk went very publicly all in, right? Massive spending, ostentatious spending, and personal appearances. He was trying to back a conservative judge, really flex his political muscle.
That election got a lot of attention. It was seen as a kind of test case. And Musk's heavy involvement made it a clear measure of his ability to actually move voters.
It backfired big time. Musk's candidate lost by double digits, and the election was universally branded as a referendum on Elon Musk. Ouch. Some voters even specifically mentioned pushing back against outside money, naming Musk directly.
Yeah, losing by that much, despite all the money and personal effort, it really suggests there are limits, right? Limits to how effective big endorsements and outside cash can be, at least in some races.
So all this adds up to what our source calls a massive public revulsion at his role in Donald Trump's administration in American politics. The public mood, based on this analysis, really seemed to turn sour on his involvement.
And public opinion, well, that's crucial for political influence, isn't it? If there's widespread negativity, it really shrinks your ability to affect policy or shape the conversation.
Okay, let's zoom out now. Let's look at the economy during this administration. Remember, they inherited a situation with the stock market near all-time highs, inflation around 3%, unemployment low at 4%, GDP growing about 3%. Pretty stable ground to start on.
Right. Those initial numbers suggested things were, reasonably okay. Moderate growth, general stability when they took over.
But then, fast forward, we see, according to our source, the worst day in the stock market since the Great Depression. The Dow was apparently on track for its worst April since the Great Depression. And the S&P 500, it had its worst start to any presidency since this data started being tracked in 1928. I mean, these aren't just bad numbers. These are historically awful drops.
Those are incredibly stark figures. They paint a picture of a really significant economic downturn. And comparing it to the Great Depression, that really underlines the level of market instability that they were seeing during that period.
Even the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, they weighed in. Predicted U.S. growth would fall pretty sharply from 2.8% down to 1.8%. Our source calls that a dramatic turn.
Yeah, when the IMF cuts its forecast like that, it signals a major shift in expectations, real concerns about where the U.S. economy was headed.
So when you put all these pieces together, the higher spending, despite the talk, the chaotic personnel stuff, the failed influence plays, the public infighting, the stock market absolutely tanking, the gloomy economic forecasts, it paints a pretty clear picture, doesn't it? And frankly, based on these sources, it's a concerning one regarding this administration's performance.
It does. When you look at all these different elements from the source material together, yeah, it offers a very comprehensive and quite critical view of the administration's actions and the results.
All right, that's going to wrap up this deep dive into the Trump years based on these sources we've looked at. But, our job, digging for the real story, that never stops.
Absolutely. Carefully examining the facts, the evidence. It's just essential if you want to understand the forces shaping everything around us.
So please, keep tuning in to the Deep Dive Report Show. We need you with us for more of this analysis. Do us a favor. Hit like, subscribe if you haven't, and definitely click that notification bell. You don't want to miss what we uncover next. We'll catch you in the next breaking news.